Hi, everybody. This is day 1499 days since Richard was premeditatedly murdered on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, on Fort Bliss. And then, this is after being retaliated against for months, severely, continuously, for reporting criminal trafficking, for reporting child pornography, for, El Paso is the home of the border illegal crossings, and of course, Fort Bliss and its notorious huge emergency intake center where hundreds of thousands, you heard me right, hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied, see, you got to hear that word, unaccompanied, ripped from their homes, put on Fort Bliss, and trafficked. Um, and most of them, we're told now, most of them are dead. So, yes, it's really, really serious. And so Richard was whistleblowing, and they lied to us, and they tried to cover up this whistleblowing. Um, they covered up the whistleblowing, and then they violated all kinds of laws, including the standard operating procedures. They did not contact us. They let the time go by. And they were, just waiting and ready to take Richard off the rolls. And why do they want to do that? So that Richard was in nobody's jurisdiction. Then they didn't have to do an investigation. He would be completely out of the military, completely off the rolls, and they would be, could wash their hands, their bloody hands, of investigating and accountability of Richard's investigation. And so when we called to say, hey, where's our son? It was, he's a criminal. They tried to peg that he was a deserter. That didn't work. They tried to peg that he was a criminal. It didn't work. Um, they took him off the rolls. We were left without any kind of assistance, any kind of help. We had to um, uh, help ourselves, um, and Team Find Richard Halliday received your help, and it was your support, all of your shares, all of your concern, that drove the military to put Richard back on the rolls, put him, because he was in jurisdiction limbo land, okay? Jurisdictional limbo land. Nobody's jurisdiction. They brought him back on the rolls. They then decided to frame criminally, this is so criminal, to frame a false narrative, to withhold the important information from us that he was a whistleblower, to tell us all kinds of negative things about our son, who, we knew was a stellar soldier because his record proved them wrong. His record was Distinguished Honor Graduate, not once, but twice. Being promoted before his peers with waivers, not once, but 3 times. Being the guidon bearer. They told us, I remember, oh, it's no big deal to be the guidon bearer anymore. What? What are you talking about? That is reserved for the most stellar soldiers, right? For the best soldiers to be the guidon bearer. And it's an honor. And it's an honor. Because a unit can't move unless the guidon is there, right? The unit can't move without the guidon. My dad explained it all to me. It's all about esprit de corps. It's all about the army is not a democracy. It's not about democracy. It's about leadership. And where you have failed leadership, like in this case, then you have dead soldiers, like in this case. So, without respecting the guidon, without respecting uh, our soldiers, the esprit de corps, the Medal of Honor ethos, you have dead soldiers. You have a failed leadership and you have dead soldiers. And that's why we had it with Vanessa Guillen. And at Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos, they had to change their name, change the name of it because they have to rewrite history. And who was the leader? Major General Michael Garrett. Michael Xavier Garrett. He was the general, the 4-star general over Vanessa Guillen and over Richard Halliday's case. And he did not want another Guillen case, right? He did not want another Guillen situation. And so a framed narrative that was false had to be put out there about Richard, even though they knew he had been murdered, even though they knew they had his remains, his partial remains. He was dismembered, that he was in many different locations because they had something worse than the Guillen case. And how do you get that worse? How do you get that worse? But in Richard's case, because it's international, you see the whole jurisdiction of it, it was a huge problem. And it's a mess for the criminals. Because they have standard operating procedures of covering up their crimes. Absolutely. It was thank you, Danielle, for coming on. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. And I'm full of vim and vigor again because of what has been happening all day. You've got a lot of Gold Star parents very, very upset. Lots of Gold Star families very, very upset. And rightfully so. So, I'm going to join in with them. I hope they don't mind. I'm going to join in with them with the disgust of the post of Kamala Harris. She cannot be with that kind of post, commander-in-chief. She cannot. She's a failed leader look, the last 16 years, her little group has been in office for 12 years. It's a failed leadership. All right. So, and it's just so disgusting. They're so disgusting. And when you're a Gold Star mother, when you're a Gold Star family, you feel it very, very hard. It is, yeah. It is really painful. It is so painful. Where was I with Richard's case? I wanted to make the point that at the beginning of this, they intentionally orchestrated and hoped, they hoped that it would happen, that Richard would be off the rolls and in no one's jurisdiction, and they could just wipe their hands clean, their bloody hands clean of this investigation. And because of the American people demanding answers, our social media posts were shared, and they were driven to put Richard back on the rolls. And then they did not do it out of their goodness of their heart. They absolutely knew that he had been murdered, that he had been brutally murdered. We believe, and I haven't said this a lot, maybe I've said it in the past, I don't know, but we believe that Richard was stabbed to death, okay? That it was a very brutal murder of stabbing and hacking, and that he was brutally murdered um that way. Okay. That's what we believe until we have our son's remains. Um, but we absolutely know that he was murdered, and they knew it. They knew it then, and they withheld that information and the proof because, see, we've been writing a book. We've been writing this all down. We have been absolutely putting on record everything that we absolutely can put down on record and collect. And we're going to give it to the American people. We're going to put it out there because Richard is a U.S. Army soldier. He's a U.S. Army soldier. He went in the military to serve the American people, to defend the Constitution, to make America a better place, to be of some help. I always have told our children, go and see if you could be of use, that you could be a help to other. Don't always think of what they can do for you. You need to be a blessing to them. You need to be a help to them. You're young. You're young. And being a help to them, you can learn something. Let people that have skills teach you something. But, so you go into the military, you aspire, and Richard aspired to be a CID agent for the U.S. Army. We know that. It's a fact. It's on record. And, he wanted to learn that trade. And he said, I can't. It's so bad. It's so bad. I've got to get out. That means that the leadership was a failed leadership. It was a criminal leadership. And we know that now. And we know that by their actions, by trying to kick us out, kick Richard out, put him in that jurisdiction limbo land, not wanting to be a help, right in the middle. This was right in the middle. You have to remember, June 30th, Vanessa Guillen's remains in that foxhole, all cut up, were found. June 30th, 2020. Weeks later, can you imagine? You have to identify it, then you have to announce it. The absolute, it's total chaos. I wanted to say some words, but total chaos. You know what is hitting the fan? They're losing their jobs, and who's at this forefront? Forcecom general, 4-star general. Treasonous, okay? General that is at the forefront. He was Vanessa Guillen's general. He was Richard's general. The you-know-what is hitting the fan. People are losing their careers. He doesn't want another Guillen situation. So, we know that. That is on record. And is it possible that they would dispose of Richard's remains? Is it possible that he had connections to Fort Bliss? Yes. Yes. He has connections to Fort Bliss. Does he have connections to this case? Yes. Yes. And not what you would expect. And here I am talking about, yesterday was Taylor. Oh my God. That guy has no personality. Um, no, no honor. No. Oh, it was so bad yesterday. Um, because your heart breaks for every soldier under his command, for every service member that is on Fort Bliss. Your heart breaks and aches because you know that their leadership is compromised. Is compromised. All in for the star. Compromised for the next star. That's it. And it's heartbreaking. Um so, absolutely the frustration. And you hear it from the other Gold Star families. The frustration. I just can't even imagine um such, all caught on video. All caught on video. That whole disastrous leaving of Afghanistan, all caught, and they don't have answers. It's like this whole assassination attempt, all caught on video. It's all caught on video, and you can't get answers. You could hear things. With Richard's case, it's more complicated, right? And yet, after 4 years, we've pieced it together. We've pieced it together, and we are confident um, that we absolutely know that, well, we know that Richard was murdered because we have that declaration. And the declaration is saying on Fort Bliss. Well, let me tell you, if you don't have the remains and you have a dead soldier on Fort Bliss, he was murdered. That's a confirmation. That doesn't take a, a high IQ person to figure that one out. So they absolutely withheld the information that Richard was a whistleblower. Then they proceeded to try to wash their hands by putting Richard in jurisdiction limbo land. Then then they brought him back, and then they organized a smear campaign. A smear campaign by a rogue criminal group from the original response team. Well, this was the original response team, but there's a rogue group within that, and they absolutely, come on, we had a asymmetric warfare cyber, um, uh, you know, threats and harassment and attack by our casualty affairs officer, our first casualty affairs officer, Joshua Lyons. Remember the asymmetric warfare officer? And Marlon Soto, the CID head of Fort Bliss, he's telling us Richard's a criminal, that Richard is a deserter. And yet, they provide, because, we believe, and we believe enough to say it, that its CID office provided the picture to Interpol that was tampered with, that was superimposed with Dallas Hart's image to affect negatively the facial recognition. Right? It's like a game or whatever. Because Richard was never missing. And yet they gave Interpol a tampered image. And they could not give Interpol any excuse for a wanted notice, which would be a red notice. Richard's record is stellar, is sparkling clean. And so Interpol it was a very big deal to understand Interpol, because Interpol will not take down. We had to work very hard to let them know, because it's very difficult to contact them unless you're law enforcement. That's why we know it was law enforcement that gave them that picture. It's very difficult. You just can't pick up your phone and call Interpol. And so we worked very hard to communicate with them that Richard's picture was not forensically in line with his facial matrix, his facial recognition matrix, that we were getting better numbers with Dallas Hart's image through the facial recognition to a very high degree, that absolutely we were told it was forensically a superimposed picture of Dallas Hart to tamper with the Interpol picture, and that the picture that was even used of Richard was also, we believe, because they've used it, maybe that was the picture they used, was illegally taken from the magistrate's clerk's office, right? Snapshotted from a government computer, because it has all the other computer screen image on it, with sensitive information. And, so all of this was tampered. There's so much evidence to show that they tampered with evidence to give to Interpol. And then Interpol had to do an investigation. They don't just trust us. They have to do an investigation. So it took time. And they took it down. They took down the picture. And the other thing that we learned during that is that Richard was a yellow notice. And so we're like, okay, he's a yellow notice. What does that mean? Oh, missing. Okay, well, they designated him missing. No. If he had any kind of record, if he was a deserter, because this was before this Interpol file was put up, before Richard was designated in November to be the first CONUS DUS 1 missing soldier under the new Vanessa Guillen flowchart, right? So they had to, where is the proof, the designation that Richard was a deserter? They didn't have it. Because if that was the case, he would have been a red Interpol, a wanted. So that was huge. That's huge evidence. They can't control every part of their lives. It's absolutely fabricated. When we did the search for the FBI file on Richard, clean. Absolutely clean. We're trying to understand all the retaliation to see, did they have any basis, any basis to do what they did to Richard? Because they retaliated against him so severely. And then they're telling us that Richard, and they're not so much telling us, okay, that was part of it. But who were they telling? They were telling the broader law enforcement community. That's who they were telling. They were telling the broader military leadership. Now, do I believe that the top leadership has any good in them? I don't believe it. I don't. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But do I believe at that time, Mealy, what they were doing with our military, what McConville was doing, what Garrett was doing, what the previous and what, they have they have no loyalty. No, they don't care a diddly squat unless it's about the bottom line of what their LLCs and their contracts produce. That's how I feel at this point. And I think I'm right. I think I'm right. Because they're heavily involved in these LLCs and compromising themselves. And so who had to be behind this, right? Who had to be behind this? Was Michael Garrett behind it the whole time? I don't think so. I think it was Clem Coward. I know it was Clem Coward. It was Clem Coward and Leilani Hart. And do I believe that they had conflicts of interest with each other? 100% I believe that. They knew each other. They worked for each other. They knew each other. And he knew James Hart. James Hart is well known, very well known. Everyone knows James Hart. Everyone knows Leilani Hart. That was part of the problem. The conflicts of interest are so great, so many, they couldn't clean it up. And they know Dallas Hart. They could not erase it all. It's just too much. It's too great. So absolutely Major General Clem Coward. We have information that he called off the search for Richard. Didn't want to search for Richard. And we have corroborating hard evidence on that because the CID director, Ford, told us in writing that Richard's investigation, the search for Richard, did not begin until September 1st, 2020. So he's murdered in July of 2020, and the search, the investigation, did not start until we drove them to start it on September 1st, 2020. A lot happened in that, right? A lot happened. We had to absolutely drive them to get Richard back on the rolls. And then I was thinking, oh my gosh, dear, I was asking, do we do the right thing? Because they are absolutely framing a false narrative around Richard. They have no interest in finding Richard. They just want to discredit him. They just want to smear him. They just want to discredit him and smear him in the eyes of the public. They want to absolutely intimidate us, harass us, threaten us to stop asking any questions and to go away. It was very clear. And they were trying to use a psyop on us, trying to smear Richard with us, trying to, as hard as they could, to manipulate our family against each other. And they brought in operatives. They brought in operatives to manipulate. They brought in operatives to disseminate their false narrative. And it wasn't working. Praise God, it wasn't working. And they were getting so desperate in all of it that, remember, Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe calls us, and this is after a lot of things happened, and I have to get the exact date on that. I have to get the exact date from our journal. Um, he calls us and he says, "I want to come visit you. I want to come to South Carolina, and I want to come talk to you, and I'm going to give you evidence. I want to show you something." And nicely, but inside of us, we were saying, "Hell no, you're not coming." Now, that sounds pretty tough, but he was up to no good. At that point, he had lost all trust, and we are very trusting people, and we are so pro military, pro army. And by that time, we knew his number, and his number was 666. His number was so up to no good that we said, "You're not coming near us. No way. No way." And he put out his little, he was offended. He was offended, and good. I hope he gets stripped of his uniform, of our uniform, our stars, our benefits that we give them, that we entrust into them. I hope he loses everything. I hope he gets arrested. I hope he faces the death penalty. Okay? I hope that the lethal injection is right in front of his face, and I hope that it is administered. I hope that justice prevails, because what he did was so bad. And, I wanted to focus on Clem Coward, but this story, that he wanted to, in his desperation, manipulate the false narrative to say that Richard did the S word. And it was the most ridiculous. I mean, it was just grasping. Oh, yeah, okay, so he just gets up and walks away. No. Sorry. Our son is good, but he's not that. He cannot unlive himself and then get up and walk away. Right? No. So, it was the most horrifying. He was offended, and he wanted to come back with his true nature, his true evil self. And he is. And he's a failed leader, and he's compromised. He's totally compromised. And, trying to be suave and, whatever. The devil likes to tickle your ears too. The devil is dresses up like in a beautiful angel, and will, tell you all these pretty things and whatever. It's like, get behind me, Satan. Get behind me, Satan. You are no good. No good. I don't care. The only thing that's good about you is that I don't want to say it. He needs to be stripped of our uniform, our stars. He cannot be trusted. We cannot entrust our uniform and our stars to demons like this, that are up to no good, that are totally compromised, and all they care is their own bottom line from their LLCs, from their investments, whatever, and their collaboration with those, yeah. So getting back to Clem Coward, and they can't hide it, because There are open records. And there are open records. And if you do some searching, if you do some investigating, you will absolutely understand that Richard was absolutely, well, I was told today, gosh, under the definition, he was assassinated. Under the definition for political, for to stop his whistleblowing, to um, discredit him, to stop his voice from reporting what he was reporting, to save their criminal activity and all of this. Um, Under that definition, and that's not me. That's not me saying it. I was told that, and I was like, I lost my breath. I lost my breath on that. Oh yeah, he was assassinated. I'm like, wow, wow. That's what people think right now. That's what people think right now. Smart people think right now. People that pay attention to this case. People that understand the the conflicts of interest. Wow. Um, People that know what Richard was whistleblowing on and the risk to the established criminal network in El Paso, the threat that he posed to them. And y'all, this was in 2019. You see, Richard's case came before the August 3rd, 2019 Walmart mass shooting. The IG were all over the barracks because of Halliday. There were audits going on. So says General Stewart. And Marlon Soto. And Marlon Soto. It wasn't just Richard's barracks, it was all of Fort Bliss. Okay. Okay. Yeah. And, so was James Hart involved in any of that? In any of the fraud? In any of the criminal activity? Was Leilani Hart involved in any of that? Was Dallas Hart involved in any of that? Was Major General Clem Coward of the 32nd ADCOM, Richard's command, was he involved in any of that? Were their bottom lines at risk? Was he threatening the bottom line? Were they engaged in childcare in a place where hundreds of thousands of children have been trafficked and most of them are dead? Yeah. The prime suspects are Leilani Hart, are Dallas Hart, is Tavita Nusa. Who's Tavita Nusa? The Fort Bliss CID agent that's a family member of Leilani Hart. He lost his badge because he was not stable. He was not stable. Uh, he was unfit to be a CID agent, unbecoming to be a CID agent. When did that happen? After the whistle was blown on him. Um, so I'm thinking if it was, I think it might have just been because of what had happened in July of 2020. Because the premeditated murder was not just before the murder, but what was happening after the murder. How to dispose of Richard's remains and any evidence was had to be calculated, had to be put into action, the plan. And do I feel like there's others involved in this? Oh, yeah, Jay Pollan, absolutely. Jonathan Ambrose, absolutely. You know, absolutely. But the prime suspects are who I mentioned. Um, you know, I think it'll come out even more because, it's hard to wrap your mind around this criminal rogue group that would do something this despicable, this kind of code red activity, this premeditated and orchestrated and calculated murder and cover up and disposal of Richard's remains. And do these people know that they have to dispose of the evidence? Yes, they're law enforcement. That's what they do. Tavita Nusa knew what to do. And we have been informed that chemicals were involved that help get rid of biological material and possibly an incinerator, and that the vehicle and the phone and and then having the problems, people would say, well, go and get the phone records and go do this and go do that. Wow. I'm telling you, the obstruction in this case, no one would believe it. They would be like, wow, how in the world did you get as far as you got to get the declaration of death? How did you do that? The obstruction is like huge, over the top, over the top. And the amount of money, people don't understand. Like, they put together that, well, they got rid of Clem Coward, right? They got, they got rid of him. They just disseminated everything. It's just so obvious that they were hiding and that they were orchestrating and that they were calculating what they could do. And they put together, this is in November. This is because in October, that whole thing happened. The end of October, that whole thing happened with FBI Nadal Bayim, right? The father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado. And not only that, he's the one that's making bids and everything for these LLCs. He's one of them. He's one of them. And they're like, oh, he's nobody. He's nobody. Oh, right? And then they orchestrated this 15 plus agency international. People don't I haven't said that enough, but it was an international task force find Richard Halliday. And if they would have, in reality, we've ran the numbers. In reality, and thank God we have friends that were in the number, the bean counting business in the military, because we're a military family. We have friends that have spent their whole careers in the military. and you run the numbers. Run the numbers. For how much would it cost if they were serious about the International Task Force find Richard Halliday with 15 plus agencies? How much would that cost? The numbers are between $500,000 and $750,000. Oh, Congress, we're going to spend close to $1 million on this little task force. How much did the Dog and Pony Show task force, International Task Force find Richard Halliday cost? It costs a lot too. And they had no op-ord, no operational order, no expectations at all, because Richard was never missing. They knew at that time in November that Richard's remains were found. And they were keeping it a secret from us, like Nadal Bayim said. Shh, shh. But they were losing control of the narrative. And I think they've lost control of the narrative, because now we're getting institutional support from law enforcement. Law enforcement is starting to get it. The broader law enforcement community has understanding now. And it was difficult. It took long because of that whole COVID stuff. It was so hard to communicate with people. It was so hard. It was just such a crazy time. Everybody would only cared about COVID. And that was a fraud. That was a fraud. That was a money grab. And that was a political maneuver to interfere in an election. Just like the orchestrated Walmart mass shooting, and was an orchestrated, deadly mass shooting to divert attention from the audits, from what Richard was reporting, and to tamper with an election. It was political. It was political. And, it is really fascinating to study that, to investigate that, because it doesn't take long. It takes a good day. Not even that. I don't even think that. But a good day to maybe wrap your head around it and say, no, this couldn't be. This couldn't be. Make sure you look at who the victims are, what their connections are. It is absolutely shocking to see the level that these people will go to destroy us, to throw us over. He's just a good meal for the coyotes. Just throw him out there for the coyotes. Is that what they did? Like, chop them up, throw them out there, food for the coyotes? I mean, this is what D.S. Thomas Kane said. We have it on record. D.S. Thomas Kane. Richard was a good meal for the coyotes. It is shocking to see the level of their bravado, their, high and mightiness, their, and we are, they might have bigger degrees and might have bigger jobs and might have a bigger house and might have a bigger bank. Oh, they don't. They're all like bankrupt. They're all in debt. I shouldn't say all. A lot of them. I mean, the level of bankruptcies are just incredible. They live so big, and they're so wasteful. It's just, and so, okay, whatever. But, and I freely admit, I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a supporter of my husband. We work together. when they say, when the Bible says submit yourself to your husband, I'm like, oh, where do I sign up? Absolutely. Absolutely. We are a team. And if people think that you can get through this life without submitting yourself to somebody, something, you're delusional. You're delusional. They'll go and submit themselves to their boss, to their jobs, to whatever sex cult, to whatever, to their compromised LLCs, to foreign and domestic enemies. They'll submit themselves to. But you tell a woman, you have to submit yourself to your husband. My husband loves me. 30. Oh, I'm trying to think, how many years have we been married? 36 year 30 what? 36 years. And love is not like, "Oh, honey." No, it's, we're going to get through this together. We're going to get through this together. We're going to get through this life together. That's what it means. For better or for worse, for richer or for poorer. Let me tell you, we've been through, for sicker, for, yeah, in sickness and in health. Oh my gosh, right? And absolutely, I am there to help him any way he needs me, and vice versa. And, I'm very fortunate in that. And I admit to that humility, to be humble, to not know, to not make all the decisions. Um, yeah. And these people look down on you for wanting to make your family work. To make your family work, and if that means, because we decided to homeschool. Someone had to homeschool. Someone had to keep the home fire burning when he was in all his deployments. And at the beginning, all his schooling. He was perfusionist. Then he was a perfusionist for like 5 years, and he said, "You know what? If I can give you one wish, what would it be?" And I said, that we would go, that we would be stationed in Germany. And he knew what that meant because my grandmother was there. My Oma was there, and I wanted to be close to my Oma because she was getting older. And he goes, "You got it. You got it." And I knew what that meant. That he gave up being a perfusionist and went back to being a physician assistant, which meant deployments. Deployments. All that schooling. Um, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." These evil people, they don't know. Um, they don't think of you as family. They don't think of the soldiers as family members. And I've been told that if they would have known what family Richard came from, they wouldn't have messed with him. Really? Really? They they will litmus test who they destroy, who they murder, who they will rape. They litmus test it, how they can get away with it. That is, uh, I tell you, the things we've heard. And that is why the Gold Star families, because they have experienced all of this, I can't even imagine what these Gold Star families that lost their service member loved ones in Afghanistan. In that, I mean, it's all recorded. And the amount of of insane manipulation of their cases, I can't even imagine. But I absolutely believe them when they say it, and when they're so disregarded like today, and thought of as just like peons, that they can't make their own decisions, that they can't organize a memorial for their loved ones. It's kind of like Major General Eisenhower wanted to organize a gunshot memorial for Richard on Fort Bliss on a holiday day where they were already meeting, and just like, let's just mention Richard's name and we'll call it a memorial and be done with it. I mean, that was the most disgusting. Oh, I was yelling. I was yelling at the CAO. I was so upset. I was like, no way are you going to use our son's name. No way. No way. Um, yeah. They they don't look on the children as humans. They don't look on the service members as humans. Um, they have no sense of duty. You saw that during the COVID. They will put anything, even the health of the nation, the health of all of their soldiers, at risk, insane risk for insanity, for the bottom line of their LLCs. I mean, I wonder how many of them had their, little deals with the pharmaceutical companies. I just wonder. I just wonder. And what did we get from Garrett? We got a Christmas card after. Well, getting back to the, oh, I can't even imagine what it's like having a missing soldier, when he knew that Richard was murdered, and that he knew, because of DES Thomas Kane, because of DHS liaison to the Department of State, Hymas Corona, because he knew what we had turned in from Agent Macmillan in Mexico with the Department of State, because he knew what Nadal Bayim, one of their own, um, said. He spoke out loud what was supposed to be a secret, never thinking. So much bravado. And now we have information that he knew Richard. He knew Richard. Richard threatened the establishment's criminal network on Fort Bliss and El Paso, with all the border illegal stuff going on. And they tried very hard with the permanent Gomar. The permanent Gomar, let's just ruin him, right? With no basis. No basis. Because you have to remember, that Gomar took the basis, used the basis where there was no basis. Because Richard was in an ongoing, that framing, that setup case. And in the courts, we have now learned that in the courts, you'll have military going there, sitting there, seeing what the outcome is of the case. Because in this country, you are innocent until proven guilty. So there was no basis for that. And to make it a permanent, that means your career is ended. And then to have that used again as a basis, and a U-turn, as a basis for a field grade Article 15 with more than the maximum punishment. You see, that shows a level of hate, of abuse of power. It's all about abuse of power. And it started with Major General Clem Coward because he abused his power those first days when he should have done the right thing with Leilani Hart. See, he has connections with Leilani Hart. And Leilani Hart is a confirmed convicted criminal with all kinds of problems, including giving sexual favors to her family member, CID agent Tavita Nusa, in order to get unauthorized access to tamper with files, to get help coached to submit a notarized affidavit that confesses to the incest, to the child pornography, to the sexual assault of a minor in her master bedroom, and the illegal purchase of weapons. So, does Richard have motive? Is there like enough illegal activity going on that Richard would say, wait a minute, things are very, very bad here, and I need to report this stuff because children are being hurt? Yes. 100%, 110,000% that there was crimes against children going on, from child pornography to the trafficking of children to the sexual assault of children, and most of them are dead. And Richard reported it. So this is going to be a very interesting week this week. A very interesting week. We'll see what happens with Bill Hicks. We'll see what happens with Leilani Hart. And I don't know what they were. I know that there's two possibilities for the declaration of death. That there are some that truly are doing their duty and that they know that Richard was murdered. He was never missing, because you've got the proof with the whole Interpol. I mean, the whole Interpol thing was such a blessing for us to understand, because it was, that was the pathway to the FBI records and everything. And it was like, oh, wow. We have peace of mind because Richard is a hero with a distinguished honor graduate character intact, and more, even more. And, he's a hero. And he was murdered just not even a month after he turned 21. Not even a month after he had turned 21. People don't understand that he was a minor during this whole thing, and that you go, oh, wait a minute, they're not a minor at 18. In Richard's case, because of all the legal stuff they did to him, it's like you have to say, yeah, sometimes he was, sometimes he wasn't, because of the laws. Anyway, it is it's so sad, and we absolutely know that Leilani Hart needs to be arrested. She's just covered in all kinds of crime, and absolutely participated for years in our harassment and the cyber attacks and everything, right? Everything. So, yeah, she's a prime suspect, And there's witnesses against her, and they tried to retaliate against they did retaliate against witnesses. And that is another live stream, a whole nother live stream. One day I can tell you the whole thing. um and I don't think they're going to be totally successful. In a battle, they might get some hits in, but I don't think they are. um the stars in their course fought against Cicero, and at the end of the day, they're doomed. And so we have to keep the faith, move forward, never lose your faith. And I say that over and over to myself. Never lose your faith, Pat. Always hold on to your faith, because God is great and God is good. And they cannot compete with that. So, just move forward. And with these other Gold Star families, uh, really yelling at the top of their lungs. I mean, they have support. They have support. And it, uh, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful. I hope that they meet with Trump. Again, again, and um, I know the memorial was very somber. Um, but I really hope that they rally with President Trump, for the sake of our service members. And I am not. I'm. I'm. I want to say I am totally aware. I shouldn't say totally aware. I'm somewhat aware, and yet the evidence is there that the best ally in the circumstances that we are in right now would be to rally with President Trump. That's it. So, and I feel that the Gold Star parents have echoed that, or they're leading that, and and confirming what we also feel is right, to get accountability for our service members, um, and to get these very failed leaders out of our uniforms. Strip them. I mean, really, just strip them out of those uniforms and out of those stars. I, they cannot have the benefits, um, because they are traitors. They've lost. They've served themselves and foreign and domestic enemies, and they are traitors. So, that's where we stand. Um, and thank you so much for your prayers. Thank you for sharing. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing. And yeah, bye bye, y'all. Good night. Thank you so much for coming on, and your prayers and your love.